Regan Hillyer here with me. Regan is an absolutely phenomenal coach. She actually goes beyond a coach. She's a speaker, she's an author, you name it, Regan. Regan's basically it. She's a multiple entrepreneur, got so many businesses. She's young, she's got things going on, and I'm super grateful to have her on the line here today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Regan.
Yay, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, no troubles at all. I'm really excited to get into today's interview and really dig behind the scenes of your life, what's going on for you, what you've built. A lot of people follow you and go, how does she do it? So hopefully we're going to get into some of those secrets today. Now, we last chatted and jumped on a bit of an interview close to a year ago, and I've been watching, you've been bouncing around as you do. You're in so many different countries. I had to check with you what time zone you're in today. Is there one place that you love and you'll always go back to?
I feel like I love Perth. I feel like I love being in so many different places. I love the variety. You know, that's the thing that I love. And I think that's part of why I'm not living a lifestyle where it's like, I just want to be in this one place all the time. You know, I love, like I'm in New Zealand in the snow at the moment. And then I love the variety. We go to Rarotonga after this and the heat, and then California, and then Peru and London, right? So I love the diversity. So I kind of have found my bliss wherever I am. And to be fair, they're all amazing places. Like I tend not to hold events in somewhere which is low vibe or not amazing.
No Bangkok City events coming up for Regan Hillyer International. Let me ask you this then, because I'm sometimes asked, like, where does Regan live? And I'm like, everywhere. I'm like, right. Okay, she's got a house in the States, but she's from New Zealand. She used to live in Bali. She used to live in Australia. Like, where do you consider to be home?
So I think home for me, like, I mean, I do feel a sense of home when I go back to Auckland in New Zealand, where I grew up. You know, I definitely feel that. I'm in New Zealand in a place in the snow in Queenstown at the moment, and it does feel homely. It does feel really nice. But again, I feel like this has been kind of part of my rituals, which I've set up with all the travel around really answering the question, you know, how can I create a sense of home wherever I am, you know? And there are definitely sort of do and certain things that I carry and travel with me, which I can kind of get out and then be like, okay, it feels more homely now. And, you know, I have a candle and I, you know, have my things, and I have little hacks to make it feel more homely, because especially, you know, we stay a lot in like beautiful houses like Airbnbs, but sometimes they're houses, they don't feel homely, if that makes sense. So yeah, I feel like I have little rituals to really, create that sense of home. Otherwise I'd be pining home for most of the year, right?
Yeah, I know how tiring it can become, and you're kind of like, okay, this has been fun, but I'm just tired now. And I know there's been times for you where you live a million miles an hour. Anyone who knows you, anyone who follows you, anyone who works with you especially, knows that you live a million miles an hour, and that you're here, there, and everywhere. Have there been times where you've been like, I know there's been at least one time where you've been like, oh my God, like, remind me not to do that again. Remind me not to cram so much stuff in. Like, do you get times where you feel like, oh, this is a bit exhausting?
Yeah, there definitely has been. I feel like there's been so many little learning curves along the way where, I have created events and stacked them back to back, and I thought it was the best idea ever because they were all, you know, within a month. And then I get to the end of the month and I'm like, this is madness. I'm so exhausted. So I feel like I'm more in a flow with it now. I'm actually fleshing out the calendar. Well, it's fleshed out for next year. So there's a lot more space. There's a lot more breathing room in terms of live events. There's actually a lot more online stuff going on, which is nice because then I can, you know, be anywhere and it's less travel basically. So I feel like I've learned on that. There's definitely, again, rituals in there around, you know, self-love and self-care and clearing blocks in the calendar where it's like, no, this is a Regan day and no one can touch it, you know, and being okay with doing that. You know, I used to have, you know, a client say, hey, can I please have a call on the Wednesday? And I'd blocked it and I'd be like, oh yeah, sure. And then all of a sudden I'm working that whole day as well. So I do feel like it is important to create the space, and you know, this as well, especially in relationship, otherwise relationship just doesn't happen as well. So yeah, it's important to create these containers. That's definitely taken like a lot of learning to get it down to this fine art. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say people need to do if they're looking at living a lifestyle like yours, like constantly, you know, moving from country to country, don't really have an exact home base, working on the road? What do you recommend? You've mentioned that you take some little things around with you to build like a homely environment wherever you are. And you've mentioned some rituals, like what do you, other than creating the space, like what do you recommend that people need to do?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if carry some items with me, and you know, for me, I love you know, carrying crystals and just some things which are mine, and I can bring them into the space and make the space feel a little bit like more like my space and my home space. One thing that I love doing is whenever I get to a place, I really clear some time to ground into the space. It's very easy, especially when you're traveling, to arrive and then you just start working, then you jump on a call, and then you're just like going to sleep that night, then you're in the next day, and then you're just in it, right? So I really try and clear the day when I arrive somewhere, or at least, you know, half the day, to really ground into the space, to go outside, to feel the nature, to feel the vibe of the place, like to really connect. I actually often reset my vision when I go to a new place. Now, I know this is maybe crazy if you're traveling in a new place every week, but I spend the time like really connecting in from here, from this place on the planet. What am I calling in? What am I manifesting? What's coming into my life? Like, because that helps me ground. That helps me of, oh yeah, that's right. In this place, you know, even if it's somewhere that I haven't even been before. So yeah, that I feel it's definitely super important. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool tips there. So you've created a massive, like, $1 million business. You've got staff. You started just 3 years ago, just with yourself, basically. And it's grown and it's evolved, and you've got a huge team. You've got events running all over the world. And every year within that 3 years that you've been running your business, congratulations, by the way, I just saw a post on this the other day, you've hit over $1 million in your business, which is pretty crazy. Now, obviously, you didn't start coaching on day one of your business. You were doing stuff before that in the lead up to Regan Hillyer International. And you've got other businesses, as I mentioned before, but if you were to lose it all today and it was like gone, like what would you do to start from scratch? What would you do to make your next $1 million back?
Totally. Yeah, I love this question. So for me, it would be firstly tuning into the inner work. You know, if I lost it all, I'd be taking a really good hard look firstly at why did I lose it all, right? I would get really clear on like, okay, what did I do or not do, which has created this, even if someone's like, oh, but it's outside of yourself. No, it's all a projection from within. So I'd be getting very clear on that firstly, so I didn't repeat the loop and the pattern. Secondly, I'd be tuning into my vision and, okay, from this clean slate now, what am I calling in? What does the next year look like? What's the grander vision around this? And really starting to get an alignment from that. I'd then be looking at what version of me do I bring to the table to embody that? And from this place, what do I now do in terms of the physical action and in the physical world around the action that I get to take around this? And so, you know, if we even go into the action piece a little bit deeper, I would literally be looking at defining firstly, what is my message? What's inside me? What are my gifts that I'm here to share with the world? How do I now put this out authentically into the world, being super intentional around who I'm magnetizing back? Who's the tribe? Who are the soulmate people that I want to work with right now? And then from this place, how do I show up in my gifts and make sure that I'm adding value for them while simultaneously solving their challenges or their problems? And from this place, literally going into a launch process, which would be the monetization piece around that. So that's a broad overview of what I would be doing.
Cool. Yeah, I love that you've gone into that, because that's something that other people can implement. Whereas people might have watched and gone, oh, it's okay for you, Regan. You've got a brand and you've got connections and you've got this and you've got that. Right. So it's really cool to hear how it would go from scratch. Now, while you haven't necessarily like lost it all, there has been a time where things were basically rock bottom for you. Are you happy to share that story with us around what happened when you were living in Melbourne? What went on for you? I know the story, but everyone watching and listening doesn't. So share with us what that was like, what you went through, and how you built your way out of that situation.
Totally. Yes. Probably about years ago from this interview right now. And this was another business that I had with a business partner that was an offline business. And basically it was a drug and alcohol rehab. And we were working with natural solutions for people. And I was also working with women that have or were going through eating disorders as well, because that's part of my past and journey. And so it's really interesting. We built this business to be reasonably successful. We didn't have barely any, systems and structures set up properly, right? And we were doing this in a place where kind of just running and going for it. Now, I moved over from New Zealand to Australia with the intention to launch out the Australia side of the business, and got a beautiful apartment there and started setting up my life. Had an email one day from the company that we were renting the apartment from, because the rent was coming through the joint business account, literally saying like, the rent hasn't gone through. And I was like, well, that's crazy that, there's 6 figures sitting in that account. And I went and checked it, and it had all been withdrawn from my business partner. There was literally $8.70 left in the account. We weren't paying ourselves out at this time. It was terribly structured. We were literally just both living out of the business account. Don't ever do that. And yeah, I had this moment where I literally didn't know what to do. I was too embarrassed to even, tell my family or anything like that. I told a friend of mine in Melbourne, one of my gay guys. He's amazing, and I'm so grateful to him for this day. And yeah, he said, look, come, I've got a couch, you can sleep on it. So I slept on the couch, and it was such a pivotal moment in terms of money mindset, because I knew that if I went straight into trying to just rebuild something or launch something or start something, I was doing it from total fear, total lack, and total scarcity. So instead, I was like, okay, cool. Like, how do I get myself into a place where I can breathe again, where I'm calm? And, a lot of the money mindset work that I did around that place was like the fundamentals of my real millionaire mindset, which got locked in. It didn't get locked in when I made $1 million. It got locked in then when I was like, how do I handle the fear and the scarcity and the ups and downs and the confusion and the not knowing this and the not enoughness, like all of this stuff was coming up. So yeah, that was basically what happened. And then I literally worked myself out of that through doing the inner work. Yeah.
And at that point you invested around 6 figures in personal development, in trainings. People were calling you crazy. Right. What does it frustrate you when people can't see the investment side of personal development? Like, let's get real here for a second, because I know sometimes for me I just want to shake people. But like, does it ever frustrate you to see someone who's so stuck, who's so like wanting change, or at least saying they want change, but then they're too scared? And I mean, I know you understand mindset, but like, they're too scared, or they won't do anything about it. They won't take the action. They won't invest the money, the time, the energy, nothing.
Right.
Does that annoy you?
It has done in the past, yes. and I've really had to let go, I guess, of the part of myself that was frustrated, because sometimes I did want to shake them and literally be like, let me send you a document of all the things that I've invested in order to get here, and now you're saying you just want to get here without doing anything. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. But yeah, I also had to let that go a little bit and be like, okay, cool, these people are on their own path. And it was interesting. Often when I stopped convincing those people and just said, okay, cool, and I just shared my story and then said, look, come back to me in the future if you are serious about this. Many of them did come back and do come back, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, winding back a little bit, like when you started out, I mean, now it's pretty normal for people to jump on a live feed. They can see you talking about ayahuasca. They can see you talking about angels. They can see you talking about energy and spirituality quite openly. But when you first started, at least looking from the outside in, it seemed that you were very mindset coach oriented. And that's how you sort of started out your brand. And most brands do grow and evolve. Was there a period at the start there? Because I've seen this happen with a lot of people where they're scared to put that hippie side out there for fear of like, oh, people might not get it, I might not make any money, or that kind of thing. Like, did you have that fear in the beginning? Because I know I went to your money mindset in Sydney, and it was money mindset intensive, and we went, it was freaking amazing. But what we did, and I've said this to you before, I'm like, that's way beyond mindset, Regan. We did a lot of energetic work. We did a lot of crazy shit that was really, really powerful. Yeah, were you ever scared to kind of advertise that or speak about it in the beginning?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I had a lot of fears that I had to work through, that I got to work through around, being worried about being judged, or, people not taking me seriously, or getting like too out there and people can't handle it. And it's so funny, like every time I go in internally and that stuff comes up, and then I shift it, and then I choose to share, right? And I choose to show up, every time the response is overwhelming. People are like, thank you for talking about this. Yes. Oh my goodness. I've been waiting for someone to give me the clarity on this. Like it just brings in people in flocks, to be honest, when I share authentically about like the one thing I don't want to tell anyone. Right. And so I always bear that in mind. I feel like it's a continual process. It's something, it's not just like, oh yeah, I dealt with that fear and now I just share everything. Like it still comes up for me, and there's still layers of my brand now where it's like, okay, I'm like going into some pretty interesting places here. Like who's going to come with me? And again, the more I can stand in that and harness that and actually be unapologetic with that light and places that I'm personally authentically going into, it always does amazing things for the brand. I'm yet to have it backfire.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, I did wonder, because I'm like, ooh, I know you didn't say anything about it. So what are the fears and doubts now that come up for you at this point in time? Like, what are the things that you might be a bit fearful about putting out at this point in time?
Yeah, there has been a lot of actually. We're currently, I'm co-writing a book with Wampa about the abundance codes, which are basically 52 codes to activate abundance across the board in your life. And it's so far beyond just personal development or just mindset. It's about 20% mindset, and there's everything from visual activators to physical activations to deep energetic rewires. Like every one of the 52 codes has all these little pieces. And so it's been an interesting place for us to walk, going, okay, this is really a mainstream product. We've been shown this, a mainstream solution for people. However, there's some pieces of it that are currently not very mainstream, and so it's like, okay, how do we share, for example, about the coded medicine, which is basically light language activations, which are coming through us, which are, in a completely different language for people to receive. And we've just been taking it gently, and, because we're also not going, we have the answers, let's just share everything. We're feeling into it. We're taking it day by day, piece by piece. We're sharing it with, select groups of clients. And it's interesting, like every time we share more, everyone goes, that was so amazing, like please can we have more of it, so we're kind of gathering the results at the same time and sharing it piece by piece, and just tuning in and asking for guidance on it every time, really asking, okay, we have this free webinar, what do we share, what do we not share, and not doing it from a place of our ego and we know and this is the right way, but instead, I'm feeling to share this, but actually no, it's not the moment for this. So really doing it from a guided place of intuition. That's what I'm.
Very, very cool. And are there days for you where it's just like, some people have a shit day? I know you love to turn things around. I want to ask you a serious question, because you get a lot done. You achieve some amazing stuff. Are you human, Regan?
Yeah. I welcome the humanness, for me, like going into the fears and the triggers and the emotions, like that's all part of it. It's such a spiritual bypass for people thinking that, oh, when I ascend or evolve, I won't have to deal with any of that stuff. Like, no, we're humans, right? And we're meant to be, evolved humans, but humans also have an emotional body and a mental body and trigger points and wounds and all the stuff, right? So when the stuff comes up, instead of being like, oh, this is the worst thing ever, this is distracting from my purpose, I'm like, oh, thank you, what a gift. Like, I feel horrible. Let me go in and feel, why do I feel like this today? Like, where's this coming from? What do I get to shine light on? What do I get to heal? Like, I'm doing this work like every single day, literally, and welcoming it when it comes up. Yeah. And for me, the key is not getting stuck in it, not getting lost in the drama of it and being there for a week and like, oh my goodness, I can't do anything in my business because I messed up. Like, no, right? Versus going, let me look at it and shift it and transform it and heal it. And how do I do that as quickly as possible?
And are there days, like I know you travel, you move around a lot, you've got a crazy schedule, like have there been days, you say you do your rituals every day, like have there been days where things have come up, you haven't done them, like what's happened on those days if there have been some?
Yeah, look, definitely And I think for a lot of people, when we say, you know, rituals or a daily practice, they think like half an hour in the morning. And it's not always that. It's really not always that. Like sometimes you're getting up early and then you're packing your stuff and then you go straight to an airport. And it's like, okay, I choose my hour sleep over that. But the thing to know is that it happens throughout the day. You know, there's yet to be a day where I'm not conscious and aware and tuning in and looking at something or seeing something or catching it or transforming it or quickly journaling about it. Like that for me, like it's such a lifestyle. It's not like an hour here and then like the rest of the day. Like it's very merged now. It's very merged. Some days it's not right in the morning by choice. Like even just here waking up in New Zealand, sometimes it's like, no, actually I'm going to tune in and do this. And then in a few hours go into this place, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, for me, it's the beautiful flow with it. And it's not boxing yourself into like the rules of like, it must be first thing in the morning. Great if it is. And great, by the way, if you're starting out and you're conditioning yourself to do this. But there is a level, I think, where you get to learn to flow with it and it gets to just happen throughout the day.
Yeah, cool. Because I'm like, how could you every single day with what you've got going on? And that makes a lot of sense what you're saying, flowing it throughout the day. Totally get that. So obviously where things are at now, you're writing the abundance codes, you're running Soul Remembrance Retreat, you're running your retreats in Peru, you've got Be Your Brand Academy going on all across the world. What's the long-term vision? Like take us out like 10 years. Like, are you still working in the coaching kind of space? Like, what have you got your sights set on? Are there things like family or things like that that are on the horizon for you? Like, what's going on in the next decade for Regan?
Totally. Well, I don't know. Okay. And I'm okay with not knowing. Wow. So it's interesting the way I vision, because I can tell you a few things. For example, 10 years out, like, yes, family is definitely a big part of it. My relationship is definitely a big part of it. I can tell you that the level of impact is so far beyond what's going on right now. The level of contribution, right, of what we're doing with charity in the world. I can tell you the pinpoints. I can tell you the lifestyle. I can tell you how we're going to get there. I have no clue. And I'm fine with that, because I'm also aware that how I got from last year to this year is not how I thought it was going to happen, right? And so for me, it's this place of surrendered manifestation, where it's really surrendering to the process and allowing yourself to be open. And, you know, I did not have it in my sights a year ago to co-write a book. It was the last thing I wanted to do. When we received to do the book, I was like, oh man, really? Co-write a book? Like, I don't even want to do this right now. Like, this isn't like, I've got my book and you've got your book. Like, why do we need to do another book, you know? But then it was like, no, okay, I'm here, I'm available, I'm listening, I'm trusting. Like, this is going to create the impact. And all right, let's do this. So I'm very unattached to it. I'm very unattached to, is it through speaking? Is it not? Am I running the retreats? Am I not? Are the team running it? Are they not? Like, I don't know, but I know the level of impact and contribution and receiving and lifestyle. Like, I know that is, you know, 100x basically where it is right now.
Yeah, 100x. And I wouldn't be surprised if you hit that sooner than 10 years, to be perfectly honest. Now, I was just talking to someone yesterday about being in business for yourself, sales and that kind of thing. And I know that you don't do everything yourself. You've got a team right now. But when you were starting out and establishing yourself in the market, like I know when you started coaching, you weren't making a lot per session. You're probably making like $20 or something per session. Whereas now you have clients paying like 7 figures to work with you. What would, and I see people, and it amazes me that people are happy to sit there, I guess, given the space that I'm in of growth and learning and that kind of thing, to see people sit and stay, like, let's say at $50 a session as a coach. What did it take for you? Obviously that's happened over a period of maybe like 8 years or something. Am I right? Yeah. Like, what did it take for you, especially in this last up leveling, for you to get to, you know, going from 2 figures for a session to 7 figures for a client?
Totally. Look, there's been different jumps. There's been different layers and different jumps. And it's interesting. Like, yeah, you're right. Like in the beginning, my very first coaching package, one-on-one, that I put out, which someone paid for, was 12 weeks. And I would call them once a week for 2.5 hours. Can you believe it? sessions, and they paid $300 not per session for the 12 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what that is, but it's like slave labor basically. But anyway, that's what I did. That's where I started. And so in the beginning, actually, what's interesting in terms of raising my rates and what I was receiving, I would hit points where I would start feeling really bad, to be honest. Like I'd start feeling like, oh, I'm drained. I don't want to call this person. This isn't worth it, basically. And then I would tune in and be like, well, am I not meant to be a coach? Do I hate coaching all of a sudden? And I'd be like, no, I love it. When I'm actually on the phone, where's the resistance coming from? And then I figured out, okay, I'm just not receiving what the session's really worth. Okay. And so that's when I was like, okay, so uncomfortable right now, I'll increase my rates. And so I did that for ages, and I went through hitting all these thresholds, you know, even like a $10,000 package, then feeling like annoyed about it. Okay, well, I get to increase it to 30, right? And so I kind of bounced in the 6-figure and under place. I kept hitting these caps, being uncomfortable, and then shifting. I had a 100K package for someone to work with me one-on-one, and I hit the same threshold. And what's interesting is I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take a break, right? I couldn't even like fathom increasing it past 100K basically. Like it was my limit. I was like, I can't charge more than that. That's ridiculous, right? And so I was like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'll do other stuff. I'll do retreats. I'll do, you know, online stuff, whatever. I'm not available. You can't hire me for one-on-one. So I went away from it for maybe 6 or 8 months or so. And people asked, I was like, no, you just can't have it. It's not there. And then actually I went to Peru, and it was working with one of the Peru groups that we take for the 9-day immersion, and working deeply with different sacred plant medicines. And there was one, it's really interesting. There was one journey that I went through, and I was asking specifically about RHI and about the business and the brand. And I asked the medicine to show me the pieces that got to be cleared out, the pieces that got to be restructured. You know, I was still running the Be Your Brand academies myself at the time as masterminds, you know, and the medicine started showing me in my consciousness all the different things that I could adjust. And it showed me, you know, step away from Be Your Brand, let leadership come in, structure it this way, do this in your business, change this. And then it said to me, Regan, you must start working with people one-on-one again. It's part of your impact. And if you can work with high-level people, then they're going to impact millions of people, and it's going to massively increase your impact, basically. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, show me what to charge. And it was like $1 million. And I remember just laughing at the medicine, being like, you've got to be kidding. And then I received this message in my body, and it's like, okay, it's not kidding. It's really serious. Others. And so it was very clear to me what I received. I was told not to market it, not to advertise for it, simply to align with it internally, choose it basically, and then the people would show up. 5 people would show up. And I was like, okay, like whatever. And so came out of Peru, did a lot of the other things in my business, could not wrap my head around charging 7 figures. I was like, this is just ridiculous. Like I can't even tell someone that. Like this is crazy. So I was in resistance for it for about a month and a half, right? And battling with it. And then I woke up one day, I was actually in Barcelona, and I just thought to myself, you know, well, actually, what's the worst thing that could happen? I could just actually choose that this is my rate. And if anyone asks me, I'll just tell them, probably won't do it anyway, but I'm just going to start owning it, right? And remembering that I was told not to market, not to go live about it on Facebook, don't do anything, right? They're going to come to you. So that morning I told Marco, and I was like, okay, I'm now charging this. I'm doing what I was shown in Peru. He's like, cool. I'm like, yep, just gonna sit here and charge this. That day, I had 3 people reach out to me and message me on Facebook Messenger and say, hey, I need to work with you privately. And I was like, oh, here we go. And so I was like, cool. And I had a quick conversation. They were all fit. And I told them the rates, and all 3 of them enrolled, literally made down payments that day. And I was like, it's working. Like, what is this? The other 2 people turned up. Yeah, it was crazy. The other 2 people turned up within the next 60 days as well. And so it was such a lesson for me around surrendering, around shifting my worth, around fully owning it, around the power of actually attracting this into your field. I did nothing. I didn't do anything in the sense of I did more to receive the $1 million people. No, like I actually just allowed it to be and surrendered to it. So yeah, interesting. That didn't happen in the beginning, but there were different journeys along the way for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very different to getting annoyed and going, okay, well, I better charge more.
Right.
Exactly. You were more annoyed at the medicine, like, what are you talking about?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Now, I want to speak to you a little bit about environment, because anyone who knows you even from that time where you hit rock bottom, let's say, where your business partner cleaned you out, and you got back like right into the personal development stuff, you've invested in being in a good environment, being around movers and shakers and leaders of the world, Tim Ferriss, Arnold Schwarzenegger, those kinds of people, going to dinner with them and that kind of thing. And some people would be like, are you high? Like, you've invested like 10K to go to a dinner or whatever it is. Like, why? And I know you're pretty ruthless, like with your environment. Why is that? Why is it so important?
Totally. So I love this so much, and I really believe that we are our environment. And I know people talk about this a lot with money, and it's very thrown around like, we are the sum of the 5 people we hang around the most financially, but not just financially, all of it across the board. You are the sum of the people that you hang around, and how deeply you're connected to your purpose, your health, your mission, your spirituality, your finances, all of it. It's all linked. And so environment's interesting because a lot happens automatically by osmosis. And so this goes either way. Right? If you have kind of negative people that are living in a low vibe and they're in your environment, and when I say environment, I mean in person, I mean energetically as well. Who's in your field? Who's in your space? Who are you looking at on a Facebook news thread? Or who are you watching on YouTube? Like, all of this counts, right? And so these people naturally, kind of hold you down and keep you in a lower vibration as well. And the other side of this is when you're surrounding yourself with amazing high vibe people, when you're tuning into content like this interview, for example, and everyone's tuning in, like, you'll notice your vibe rises, so you feel good. It's like you start automatically just picking up pieces of who these people are. And so it's funny, I've invested over $1 million in my own education. That's over a 10-year period. But when I look at it, and when I look at all the courses, all the retreats, all the one-on-one coaching, everything, the biggest chunks have been towards environment. You're right. They've been towards dinner and experiences and 3-day things where I get to just hang out with someone, And I just know that just being around someone is going to massively impact me so much more than trying to learn something from my mind from them. It's everything.
Yeah, totally different to opening up one of Tim Ferriss's books, let's say.
Exactly.
Okay, so who are the 5 people that you're hanging around or being influenced by at the moment then?
Yeah, cool. So it's definitely more than 5. I mean, that theory does definitely work when you're looking at it with your 5, but I feel like I have an amazing, amazing environment of people. So my partner, Wampa, is definitely a huge influence. And of course, like, this is a good thing for everyone to look at. Like, how's the person you're going to sleep with every night? Like, how's their vibe? Like, where are they at? What are they focused on, right? And so we really feel each other in such a high vibe. I have amazing people on my team that I'm working with in terms of mentors. I have an amazing astrologer that I go deep with, who, I have sessions and calls with, but basically we chat all the time on WhatsApp as well. So I have, so there's him and then 3 other, mentors and coaches that deep dive into different areas like channeling and things like that. And so I have, like, I call them like my superhero team, basically. So I have them and I access them and I have the sessions, but beyond that, like, I feel their energy in my field, right? And vice versa, which means I'm just absorbing the best parts of them, which I love. And then, beyond that, I have beautiful friends as well, beautiful friends, and not like hundreds of them, but select beautiful friends that Wampa and I share with and that we stay with and have beautiful dinners with and connect with and share, on WhatsApp and on Facebook. And all of that's so important to me and so nurturing. And it's beautiful when you meet people that are in a high vibration as well, but you also have some different codes for them, and then you're sharing some stuff with them and they're sharing some stuff for you. And there's this like beautiful exchange happening, all in a high vibration, not in a place where they're like super low vibe and you're carrying them, or vice versa,
Totally. So who are they, Regan? Who's mentoring you? We all want to know. You're like, yeah, I've got 3 mentors. We're like,
oh yeah, they're not very well-known people. They're not like big people in terms of big Facebook following and stuff. But there's one person called Jeremy, basically, who's the astrologer guy who I talked about. I have another lady called Emily, and she does like grid work basically on the field and works with like different templates and codes and all of that. I have just received an amazing session from a girlfriend of mine called Sandy as well. So we're exploring the possibility of like, again, going deeper. She works with a couple of different healing partners, again, pulling in, working a lot with past lives templates and, archaic records and stuff like that. And who else? There's obviously Lisa Nichols, for those of you who know Lisa. Lisa and I have a beautiful relationship where I started off as a client with her, and then we ended up launching a course together, and now we have this beautiful, almost sister relationship where we share with each other and we're reflecting back parts of each other all the time, which is really beautiful. And there's someone else I'm missing as well. Who else? Oh, and this other lady, Kat, who I've worked with maybe about 8 months now, who's taken me deep into channeling and discernment and actually starting to work with different beings effectively. So yeah, it's kind of like all these different people from different angles, and collectively it makes a powerful team.
Yeah. Awesome. And where do you find people? Like, do you just come across people? I know I've been asked before, like one friend asked me, how do you find a mentor? And I was like, I don't know, just like go out. Like, I was like, maybe at the start you might find someone who you have to pay, but like, where do you find your mentors, especially if they're so like off the grid, let's say? Like, do you just come across them in life and places that you're going and speaking on stage and all that kind of stuff? Or
Yeah, totally. It's it's not like you go like findamentor.com and like, right? I feel like it definitely, when you're ready, these people show up in your field. And it's interesting. I often, like, these people will show up for me when I really intentionally go, okay, cool. Like, I really desire someone to deep dive with me on this thing, right? And then I just hold the attention in my field, and before I know it, someone's like, oh, you need to talk to this person and that person. Like, I'll give you a good example. Actually, one of my other mentors, who I didn't name, but we work together, and he's in LA, and I call him like my heart mentor, basically. Like, he keeps my heart in check. He keeps my integrity and my heart and my humanness in check, right? And so I remember saying to him, his name's Mark, and I remember saying to Mark, you know what? I want someone to mentor me financially who was like beyond, like who I can even like fathom, right? Like I want someone where it's not like, oh, this is how they scaled from 1 to 10 or 10 to 20. Like, I want somewhere it's like, I can't even like process how you've done that, right? And so, and I was very clear. I said, I really desire for her to be a female, and she's got to be like heart-centered and connected to, spirituality and truth. And he's like, oh, you have to meet Betty. I'm like, who's Betty? And so he set up this beautiful breakfast meeting with this lady, Betty, and we had 45 minutes, and I was very grateful for her time. Bianca, we were there for 6 hours having breakfast, literally. And she was like, she's in her 60s. She's like, you're like the younger version of me. Like, you even use the same language. And we just fell in love with each other. And, she's been in my field now, working together for must be nearly a year now, and she literally plays with billions of dollars with a B, and so she's someone for me where, I held the intention and put it out there, and then literally she showed up. So it's the same principles as manifestation. If you're looking to manifest money or a beautiful relationship, I mean, it is a mentoring relationship at the end of the day.
Yeah. So just be in the right place at the right times, put the intention out, and also maybe chat to people about it, because you never know who knows who.
Ask people. I'm not sure if there's something, and if someone's watching this, I wouldn't be asking, who do you know that could be my mentor? But I need someone like this who can mentor me on that. Like, really get clear on what you're looking for, because there's a lot of different people out there.
Totally. Now, on the flip side of that, have there been times, or can you tell us about a specific time where you've let someone into your circle and gone, that was a really bad idea?
I don't think there's a time where I thought it was a bad idea. However, there has been learnings for sure. So, someone that I was working with recently, and she was mentoring me more on, I guess, the spiritual side of things. And then just after a couple of sessions, I just started feeling like, oh, like there's just some stuff that's not in alignment. And so I ended up not even completing all the sessions with her. And I never asked for, a refund or anything like that. I just let her know, like, hey, I just, I feel complete, basically. And it was interesting for me, because it wasn't an energy of, oh, why did I do this? But more like, oh, interesting. Like, she's taught me this, and this is now what I'm aware of. And so for me, I'm always looking for the lessons around it, because I trust it's happening for a reason as well. Yeah.
Very cool. So Yeah, I know one of your intentions is to be the queen of the internet. I was about to ask, where can people find you? Where do you prefer people to look for you? Because you're basically everywhere.
Yeah, totally. So com or any social media platforms. It's all under Regan Hillyer. I'm very much showing up right now on Facebook and on Instagram. There's a lot of beautiful free daily content which goes out in there. So yeah, tune in, say hi, send me a message, and let me know you came from this interview as well.
Yeah, cool. Now thank you so much for your time today. Before we jump off, because I did say this to you earlier, I do laughter yoga and laughter wellness, and I love to laugh with all the guests who come through. And I had an idea. I was like, I'm not sure what we're going to laugh about, but we're actually going to do billionaire laugh. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend that suddenly we've hit that space. We're billionaires. And guys who are on the line, feel free. If you want to close your eyes, if you want to get into this space, let's do it. Let's pretend we're billionaires. And we're just going to laugh and be grateful for the fact that we're billionaires. So,
okay. Yup.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Regan. Much love for you, and I'll chat to you soon.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.